Hey, hello everybody, and welcome to this very special Champions for Earth broadcast. Really, we've joined with Rhydian Cowley, Australian race walker, who's out getting ready in final preparations for the Olympics in just a few days' time, starting, and his race in about a week's time. So we're super lucky to get the chance to talk to him. He's obviously a focused man getting ready, and I'm super stoked to get to speak to you just before we get to get to the campaign. But I just want to explain to people, because we're all busy rushing around, this is going to be rough and ready. We're going to get this on YouTube as quickly as we can, so the Champions community can find out about you and get this, rather than waiting for days to get it all nice and fancy. Because I'm not into that. I just want to speak to you. So I'm really excited, Rhydian, and I'm just going to introduce you before we get into it, and because people might not know, but you're a member of Champions for Earth, as well as other athlete kind of campaign organizations as well. You're a race walker, which is something I don't know a great deal about, but you're a 20K and 50K race walk specialist. This is your third Olympics, which is just on its own a wicked achievement. You've been a national champion in Australia 3 times. You've been 8th place is your personal best in the Olympics. And it seems to me like you must have had, a really long and an established career, and it's super cool to have you here. So, Rhydian, welcome. And just before, I don't know very much about race walking. Just tell me about what you really like about it, and what you think kind of is the attraction, and what got you into it.
Yeah. Oh, well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's great to have this chat. It's a good distraction in between final preparations. Yeah, I first did race walking in Australia. We've got this thing called Little Athletics, which is basically a way for getting kids into athletics and just trying all the different events. And yeah, race walking was one of the events that I was just naturally pretty good at, and I guess I've stuck at it ever since then. It's basically trying to go as fast as you can without running. So it's especially at the Olympic level with the 20K, the 50K race. Yeah, it's kind of similar to long distance running, but it's just also got that added technical aspect. And it doesn't matter if your technique's good for most of your race. If you have one bad kilometer, you could get disqualified. So yeah, it's a really interesting challenge, that combination of like the fitness side of things, strength side of things, but also the technical side of things
So
that
you've
I
got to
really
be
enjoy.
super focused, like, to keep your technique. Because yeah, one, do you get 3 chances? Is that right, or is it like, how does that work?
Yeah, so basically there's judges around the course. If they think that you're close to breaking the rules, I'll wave like a little yellow paddle at you and being like, "Hey, careful." And then if they do think that you're breaking the rules, and that could either be like visibly losing contact with the ground, or they think that your front knee is bent when it hits the ground,
Oh, wow.
um, basically they'll write down your number and send it off to basically like a central sort of race HQ where they tally up those sorts of things. And yeah, if you get 3 judges that think you've broken the rules, you have to go into what's called a penalty zone. I kind of think of it as like a bit of a timeout. You have to
Yeah.
sit and think about what you've done for a few
Oh
minutes,
man, yeah.
and then
Naughty
if
step.
yeah, then if a 4th judge thinks that you've broken the rules, then you're disqualified.
Wow.
So yeah, basically it used to be just those 3 judges, and then you'd be disqualified. But yeah, that penalty zone change came in a bit under 10 years ago. So it just gives more people a chance to finish the race. But over 20Ks, that time penalty would be about 2 minutes.
Yeah,
Basically,
and you'll be done.
if you get a penalty, like you're not winning the race.
Yeah. Wow. And so, may I ask? I've got honestly so many questions. I need to honestly hold myself back. But do you like try to? Do you aim? Is it Do you aim to not have any issues at all with the judges, or do some athletes like really push the limits, or does it basically that everyone's the technique is locked down and you just have to just keep going at it?
Yeah, I mean, ideally you'd have like a clean sheet throughout the race, but yeah, sometimes like some judges might be bit pickier
Yeah,
than other
a bit
judges, depending on
subjective.
how your technique looks, because everyone's body moves a little bit differently. Um, yeah, sometimes as well, it might depend on where on the course you are or what time of the race you're in,
Mm.
like particularly when you're getting tired, or if it's at the close to the end and you're fighting hard with someone for position, you might
Yeah. Okay.
lose a bit of shape then. So yeah, it's interesting tactically from that perspective. You can't just be like, "Oh, okay, I'm good enough, and I'll just like run the rest of the way. You
Yeah.
have to walk the whole way.
Wow. No, that's super interesting. And another thing that I noticed, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I was because I'm going to come and watch you in Paris, or I'll be in Paris, and I'm going to come and watch you. I'm really excited. But it said the race starts at 6:30. Is that because of? Is that correct?
I think it'll be 7:30 actually for my race,
Ah,
but
okay.
that'll be 6:30 British
To kind of
time.
open up the show, sort of thing. I suppose that makes sense for the.
Yeah, so I guess because it's an endurance race and it could get quite hot in Paris potentially, yeah, they basically don't want us to be cooking out there too badly.
Okay.
There is the male race first, up at 7:30, and then the female starting at 9:20. So also they just want to make sure that they're not cooking the women who are
Yeah,
going
yeah.
second
Okay.
either. So but yeah, definitely like the heat in Paris, I guess like it was in Tokyo as well, is a major concern for the endurance athletes, especially when climate change makes it much more likely that you're going to get extreme weather in
Mm.
summer.
Wow. So yeah, it's super. Honestly, I wish I could talk to you for more about this, and maybe we'll get a chance depending on how we're going. But I just wondered if you'd be. It feels honestly like a privilege to speak to athletes kind of in this phase when you're kind of focusing down and just kind of trying to be in your place. But also, as you said earlier, you also have to kind of fill up the days, and you're tapering your training, and you've got to somehow kind of occupy yourself in kind of mellow ways. So I'm really feel very grateful to do this. But I was wondering, how is your preparation? How's your preparation been, and how are you feeling? Where's your head at right now in terms
Mm.
of the games? Because you're racing in 6 days' time, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, on the 1st of August for the 20K walk. Yeah, I mean, there's only so many naps you can have during a day, so it's good to good to have some conversations with people as well. Yeah, preparation's been really good as a whole on whole this year. I've yeah, just been really consistent. There's been basically no injury issues so far, and touch wood stays that way for the next week. Um, so yeah, I've been getting personal bests over pretty much every distance I've raced this year, and training has been good. I had a month up in St. Moritz in June, and now I'm currently in Montpellier just for my final preparations before going into Paris and starting to. It's good coming down from altitude. You get a bit more oxygen in the lungs. You can actually walk quickly without feeling like you're dying. um, yeah, so between that, knowing that I've been in career best shape this year and that the training's all going well and I'm feeling confident and fast out there right now, yeah, going to be giving it my best shot out there on the streets of Paris, and we'll see how that ends up in terms of performance.
And how are you sort of psychologically? Do you do quite a lot of work on your mental preparation? I mean, you've been to the Olympics now. This is your third, so you know this kind of strange similarity but everything different kind of feeling. How do you kind of take that on for the games? Because some people, I don't know, it might not be that big a deal for you anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I suppose I just mostly have to just focus on the process. I don't know if I'm too busy thinking about where I think I'm going to finish, then that's kind of not really useful for me. But also, I guess I've learned over the years for myself that I perform at my best when I'm in like a happy, sort of relaxed headspace. And so, yeah, really the last week or so, specifically before a race, it's just setting aside time to do those things that really fill up that bucket and make me relaxed and happy. One thing that I do like doing is watching birds, and pretty much wherever you are, there's always birds around. So yeah, taking time for that's pretty fun. Before the World Championships in Budapest last year, we were staying in the middle of the Danube, and it was sort of like a park around the hotel. And I did quite enjoy going and watching the woodpeckers around there. We don't have woodpeckers in Australia, so
Mm.
that was pretty delightful. Down here in Montpellier, I've on a few training walks seen some flamingos. Again, we don't have them in Australia, so it's just like for me, it's exciting. It's new
Yeah.
birds that I don't usually see.
Cool, man. So it sounds like you know what you need to do and you're kind of doing it. That's really nice. I just remember, yeah, you're trying to like kill time in a sort of vaguely weird but sensible way. I don't know. And may I ask as well, you don't have to tie your colours to the mast here, but what's your hopes for the campaign? You don't may not have to say, where you want to finish and all that, but just what do you hope to be true when you finish this games? What do you hope to feel about this whole, this last period, whether it's the last few weeks or even actually the last cycle?
Yeah, well, I think yeah, for every year in my sport, and especially for every Olympics that I've done, it's really just about showing the things that I've learned over the course of my career, and then showing that I've been able to apply those lessons. Um, Yeah, it's going to be honestly really competitive in the 20K walk. The depth of the event has really exploded in the last couple of years. So I think if I have a day where I'm replicating what I've done throughout this year, being in personal best shape, that like a top 8 is possible. But I know that I can also have a pretty good day and probably finish like 16th or 20th and still be pretty happy with my walk. So
Mm,
I'll just focus on the process, not get too carried away about the placing. Hopefully that good placing comes. But then also we have the second event here in Paris. They no longer have the 50-kilometer walk. The last Olympic one there was in
right.
Tokyo, and instead we've got a mixed team relay. So that helps athletics fulfill their goal of having an equal number of medals available for men and for women. And so yeah, hopefully I will be lining up on the 7th of August for the mixed team relay, and we think the strongest Australian team is a potential medal chance. So again, we just got to follow our processes and
Yeah.
hopefully let the result take care of itself. But yeah, there's a chance that I'll be in that top team potentially, and so yeah, if I am, it would be really amazing. Like, it just would just be incredible to come home with a medal. But even if we don't come home with a medal, I think we'll still be really proud of our efforts.
Yeah, all right, man. Well, look, that is really nice to hear. And I suppose as an athlete myself, we know you have it drilled in, but it's also just it is a test of believing in your process, and you just got to try and do it. And I suppose it's interesting to hear you say that over all these years, where you're at sounds calm and ready. And I'm also a little bit interested to hear about this team event. Have you done many of those? Do you like? Because I remember when we didn't compete in teams at the Olympics, but team events at World Championships were really legitimately exciting and quite a step out of our normal training kind of things that we train for. And there was quite a bit of pressure actually because you're actually working for your team as not just your own performance. So I don't know how does that dynamic working for you?
Yeah, and for us walkers, this team event is a brand new event. It's basically this is the first year of it, so lots of countries are still learning it, learning the best way to go about it. So it's great to have that challenge. In some ways, it's just like you're taking an event that you know how to do, and you're just trying to do it in a completely different way. That's just really testing your skills and your knowledge and your
Mhm.
ability to work together. Yeah, hopefully it'll be interesting on the broadcast. Our experience in the qualifying race for this was that it can get a bit chaotic.
Yeah, yeah.
But especially I think part of the chaos for us was Australia was trying to qualify two teams, and we were having to do some, like, well, at least the team managers were having to do some quick maths whilst everyone's going around to figure out whether we're getting that second team in or not in. Yeah, so in that sense, like, it'll be a fun challenge again at the Olympics to see if we can develop on what we learned from that qualifying
Mm,
race earlier in the year. Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be interesting whether I'm taking part in it or I'm on the sidelines.
But you're still part of the team, I guess, of the squad that builds the
Abs-
squad towards delivering
Absolutely,
that
yeah.
person onto that moment, right?
Yeah, you want to be like the one out there racing, but if you're not out there racing, then you want to be doing the next best job for the people that are.
Mm. Wow, look, hey, that's super lovely, and this is just I feel genuinely psyched to hear it all, and it's super cool. And I'd also, the reason that I came to know of you is through being an environmental champion for Earth, someone who's prepared to use their voice, use their platform to speak out to protect the future health of our planet and everything that depends on it, sport included. So I know a little bit, but it would be really interested to share about kind of what is your kind of area, your niche in this kind of work, what you do, and what you're particularly kind of pleased or proud of that you get to do, that you think is contributing to the struggle really for just for climate, ecological safety, justice, whatever you
Yeah.
want to describe it. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely one of those types of people that just likes to have all my fingers in every different pie as much as I can. So sometimes I do spread myself a little bit thin, but yeah, basically just like I just try to align what I do with um, yeah, just environment things that I care about, which includes the environment. So at the moment, I'm on leave at the moment, but I work 4 days a week at a conservation not-for-profit in Australia called Bush Heritage Australia. And they basically, it's sort of like private land conservation. They'll purchase like a block of land and try to restore it to good health. How it was maybe before colonization happened. So like in my work, with my work hat on, I'm still sort of working in that area, but also I'd say things that I'm pretty happy with at the moment, or I, yeah, would be within my State Institute of Sport back in Australia, and then also my Sports Federation, Athletics Australia. Both recently got them to, they're working on sustainability strategies, which they weren't before. So maybe there's other people also in those organisations that have helped push that along. But I do feel like me sticking my head above the parapet and saying something has probably helped give a little bit of impetus
Particularly
to that.
powerful, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm also, I guess, contributing to those strategies. So for me, I'm feeling satisfied that within my sphere within sport, that I'm pushing those parts of my sport to respond to climate change adequately because, um, yeah, it's sort of similar to how you were talking about in your Guardian article recently. Like you don't know what the outcome's going to be, whether you're going to be successful or not, but you have to do something. It's definitely not going to be successful if you don't try to do something. So yeah, that's where we're at, and a start's better than nothing as well.
And what kind of brought you into it? This, I'm interested because lots of people, obviously you're competing and training outside a lot. And I'm thinking to myself, doing this in Australia, you will be seeing what is going on right now on one of the pretty much, well, we're all on the front line. We just don't realize it, but it seems like it's very obviously a front line sometimes in Australia.
Yeah, I think for me, really, in 2019, 2020, when Australia had that really catastrophic bushfire season, that was I was aware of climate change before that, and it was a concern for me, but it was really a catalyst for me to be like, well, I can't just wait for someone else to fix it or solve it. I've got to get out there and, with whatever means that I have, help. Basically get out and push the boat or push the car or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whatever analogy you want to use. um, yeah, because yeah, if I don't help, like it's clearly not being fixed yet, so it needs more people out there pushing things along. Um, and yeah, that kind of really started me. Well, we had that, and then we went straight into the COVID pandemic, so I had a lot more time to sit and think about things, and I'd really decided that I need to put a lot more of my time and energy into speaking out for the environment, just even talking about things that maybe might be a little bit taboo otherwise, like noticing that we're continually having the world's hottest day. I think Monday was the most recent time we broke that record.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, you just sometimes I think people, and studies have shown that people are concerned about climate change, but they're just not, I guess, not confident to talk about it with each other. And so just trying to break that taboo. And, I know I'm not the sporting person with the biggest profile, but I do have, I guess, some level of influence within people that are close to me in my community. And so, well, if I can break the taboo for them and maybe they talk about it more, and we can get more action happening, whether that's on a local or an international level, yeah, it all helps.
And I was also interested as well because this is something not necessarily that many people involved in environmentalism might not start off knowing about this stuff. Certainly, I didn't. But it's really interesting what you're talking about. You said in your work, with your work hat on, you're talking about colonialism and the impact. And I know in Australia, there's a lot of work and a lot of effort and seemingly a lot of thought goes into um, what Australia was like before European settlers arrived and before the Brits sent all their bad eggs and all a lot of actually not at all bad eggs got sent to Australia. Um, just to talk a little bit about that, just to set the context of like what that work means, because for example, we don't really do that in the UK. For example, that
Mm.
doesn't really exist.
Yeah, so I suppose in Australia, like the Indigenous people of Australia, sometimes they might be referred to as traditional owners or traditional custodians. Um, yeah, before colonisation happened, they had their ways of, I guess, what they would call caring for country, which is just their way of land management. So that would be like regular small fires to shape the land and also influence like how flammable the land is. They actually extensively managed. the country, even though that wasn't recognised by initial colonial settlers.
Okay, yeah.
And yeah, I guess particularly for Australia, there was a real explosion once a path was found over the Blue Mountains in Sydney of
Mm,
pastoral squatters, basically racing all over the country with their particularly sheep flocks, and it just utterly destroyed the way of life for Australian Aboriginal people, and also yeah, cut their ties with country and their ability to look after country. And so yeah, Australia since then has really changed. There's a lot of issues with deforestation that continue to go on, but also land degradation, compression of soils. Yeah, just trying to undo some of that harm, and also I think from a cultural perspective, just being able to give out more access to country for traditional custodians that yeah, they are still around. You know, they weren't wiped out by colonization.
mm,
Indigenous people worldwide are strong. They don't just disappear and fade away completely. So, you know, giving people that access to country and their yeah, ability to care for country again and care for it the right way is really important. One of the things that my workplace does, Bush Heritage, is because of climate change and because of the changes that some bits of land have now faced for over a century now. This traditional knowledge is really important, but also modern science has a role to play
mm,
because, well, some things have changed, and then also you need to sometimes have those more modern methods to figure out how to get things back to how they were.
mm.
Um, yeah, it's interesting. I'm in the fundraising side of that, so I'm not directly working on the ground, but I
You
know that
know about this
it's
much
really
more.
satisfying for me knowing that I'm supporting that work, and it's not just another sort of environmentalism with a colonial hat on it. It's really trying to make sure that it's led by the right people with the right cultural knowledge.
Hey, look, well, I think it's really nice for you to talk about this because it reminds me as well of my athletic time when I was a full-time athlete, and in this country in the UK where I did my career, we are incredibly lucky. But I know many Australian athletes and many Australians, not many Australian, many athletes around the world are not full-time athletes, and you're holding down a 4 days a week job and being an elite athlete and being a triple Olympian. That
I'm
is,
really lucky that yeah, my work's just so supportive of me, and the job that I've got actually lets me basically work from wherever. So I was yeah working whilst I was in St. Moritz this year. Yeah, it's really helpful to make it all fit together. Uh,
and does that help you with your sort of mental, sort of psychological resilience as well, having a kind of grounding that's beyond sport? So you're not, I mean, it's really important to invest as much as you can into your sport, but having a kind of safety net, I think, people might not call it that, but some sense of who you are beyond would be really interesting.
yeah, it's a bit of a combination of I guess you have the financial security that's not entirely dependent on your sport, but also then, yeah, you have that greater sense of self. You're not just defining yourself by your sport. Within Australia, particularly in the last few years, there's been a lot more of a push to consider like athletes as whole people rather than just as
Yeah.
athletes. So last year, a new strategy within Australia was released, like Win Well is what they called it. So really, the philosophy is not just about performing well on the field of play, but also about doing it in the right way and also the things that you do off the field of play as athletes. So it's really about that whole person sort of recognizing that when someone is happy in their life and their life is yeah conducive to just fulfilling them as a whole person, that it makes them better athletes as well.
Mm. Oh, well, that's super interesting because I think there's a whole discussion there, isn't there, of, UK kind of imported the Australian model, kind of turned it into like put it on, on afterburners. And now I think we're in fact also UK sport and I think around in other parts of the world as well, we're seeing that people are realizing sport has got more to say than just winning or losing or medals or whatever. There's actually
Yeah. The stories are more interesting than just who won what. You know, particularly if you're in a community, a lot of Australian sports people come from smaller, I guess, regional towns. You know, the people in those towns don't care whether their athlete comes first or last as much as they just care that they're representing their town and they're really proud of them.
Yeah. Oh man, this is lovely to hear. And I'm just reminded I've actually got a t-shirt on today, True Athlete Project. I don't know if you can see that, but that's a super good thing that's actually talking about the power of sport and getting out there. Massive support of their work and they support Champions for Earth as well. So it's interesting to hear you talk about that as well. And so I thought we've got to keep carrying on because I don't want to take up all your time with that. I just we could talk all day, but I was going to ask you about the Paris Olympics, kind of going back to kind of where we're at right now. And the Paris Games is talking about it being the greenest games ever. Um, and I thought I'd just first of all just get your top line, reaction on that because I know you've been at work around this as well, and so have I. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's great reading about a lot of the initiatives that the Paris Organising Committee have put in place. I think that it is really good for Paris's legacy. But I mean, if you think about it, the 1924 Paris Games was probably a lot greener because it had a lot less impact, a lot fewer
Mm,
athletes, a lot fewer tourists. So it, yeah, claiming something to be the greenest games ever is like in comparison to what? Like maybe the more modern Olympics, like say post 2000s or post 1984 when it got a bit more professionalized and corporatized. Like maybe, but yeah, it's not to take away from the good things that the organizers are doing, but I think also that's pretty heavily a marketing spin.
And I know one of the things that certainly I've been involved in, and I think you were too, was because of this greenest games tag, it has become like a feeding fest for the greenwashers and the sport washers. And they're like jumping in to hang on the coattails of this. I actually would be harder and say they come here to pick on the bones of it, frankly, swooping in. And Toyota is the lead sponsor of the Olympics and the Paralympics. I'm not sure totally about that, but anyway, so
Yeah,
the
it might be.
yeah, I think it's for both, isn't it? Anyway, and I was on a radio interview this morning, and they said, are you gonna talk about this company, and please don't mention it by name." And I was like, "Oh, am I allowed to say they're one of the world's leading car manufacturers, begin with a T?" And they were said, well, you might be able to say that." But anyway, the presenter said Toyota before I did. He beat me to it. But this campaign is super interesting, right? Because Toyota is going to be everywhere. All of their electrified cars, which we might talk about just now, and the fact that the carbon footprint of Toyota is bigger than France itself, and they are actively working behind the scenes to slow climate action down. They're working to lobby governments to slow down regulatory changes, to bedevil, efforts to make necessary changes, and also upfront, they're kind of making out like they're super cool, but they're not really. And I don't know. You're going to be there. You're going to see this. You're going to probably be a part of it. In fact, you're going to be probably photographed in front of some of these billboards. How do you feel about kind of that side of things? Because it seems like certainly for me, and I'm guessing for you as well, this will be quite difficult, uncomfortable.
Yeah, I guess that sometimes it's the nature of sport, particularly when there's sponsorships involved, is you're not necessarily going to share values with all the sponsors of your sport. Um, yeah, I mean, speaking of Toyota, like we actually have a Toyota Prius at home.
Mm,
One of the things with Melbourne, where I live, is particularly in the outer suburbs, it's quite car dependent because there's
yeah.
just really limited public transport options otherwise. And so yeah, like I kind of need to have a car. And the Prius was good for its time,
Mm,
particularly when it was first launched. Hybrids, did offer that, having lower carbon footprint than a
mm,
traditional petrol vehicle. But yeah, it's long since been past that time. EVs now are much, particularly if in Australia there's lots of houses have solar panels on their roofs. You can charge your EV from that, and it's completely zero emissions electricity that you're running your
yeah.
car on. And yeah, I think the fact that in Australia that Toyota's been slowing down transitions to electric vehicles through their lobbying actions has been
It's crazy.
not amazing. Yeah, certainly in our household, we're looking to um, hopefully replace that car with an electric car at some point when it's
Mm,
makes sense financially to do so. It's part of our, I guess, little household plan of decarbonising and getting off of fossil fuels. But then I think also sometimes if we're just fixating on who the car sponsor is for the Olympics, you almost lose sight of the thing of what about active transport? What about cycling? What about walking around places, designing our cities so that you don't have to drive everywhere? That's almost, I think, would make more of a difference in terms of emissions and transport emissions because, yeah, it's going to take a while for a lot of countries to get all their electricity generation down to zero emissions, and there's still a lot of embodied emissions in the creation of cars. So
Mm,
yeah, there's not as many embodied emissions in the creation of shoes to walk in, for example, or bikes that might, if you look after them, will last
mm,
decades, and they're going to weigh a whole lot less than cars. So yeah, it's interesting. There's multiple ways to think about that with the mobility sponsorships that
mm,
the Olympics have, but yeah, I guess getting back to the original point, yeah, it's definitely I guess Toyota as well with their hydrogen technology that they're trying to float as well. That's another aspect. It does give those brands a bit of a license to be like, yes, we're absolutely doing the right thing. You can trust us,
mm.
and just hoping that more people don't look after or look under the hood.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's the thing, isn't it?
sponsorships. Yeah, definitely something that a lot of sports like events and organisations um, might need to look a bit more closely at. I know there's definitely a worry of like, oh, well, we won't get as much money otherwise. But I think the experience with cigarette companies and the phasing out of their sponsorships shows otherwise.
And it's super interesting, isn't it? Because this is a broader question: is what's going on in sport that it needs to get this essentially dirty money? That is, how can it not survive without that? What is going on? Because this stuff is, this money is betraying and stealing the
It,
future of the participants and the
yeah, it
fans.
almost lends itself to a deeper analysis of the capitalist system, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
And it's interesting, isn't it, as well? Because, well, don't get me started. In fact, I've decided people can look it up. So there's a fantastic report by the New Weather Institute called "Polluters on the Podium." You can have a read of that. You can just Google it; it'll come up straight away. And there's another report called "Rings of Fire." There's so many interesting conversations around sponsorships, athlete welfare, the impact of climate change on sport. I think there's going to be quite a lot of talk about this at the Olympics, and I think that's kind of welcome. It's kind of the power of sport being used to communicate and that. But I think I want to just kind of start to wrap things up, and because I just feel like we could talk all day, and I want to ask you've got a new fan. I am a fan, and
Thanks.
I'm going to be pulling for you. I really hope that you do really well, but I'd like to ask you: can you explain to people how they would best find out how you're doing and follow your racing and yes, support you in whatever way?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the most prolific social media poster, but you can definitely find me on Instagram. Probably see me posting like random photos of birds in my stories mostly, or reposting yeah, resharing whatever it is in the stories of like, hey, the world just had its hottest day on record again, type stuff. Yeah, where else? I guess yeah, I haven't really
You're
been.
hoping to race on the 1st of August, that's right, isn't it? The
Yep,
1st of August, and it's the
7th. Yeah.
7th is the team event.
So yeah, that's Paris time. That's 20 past 7. Oh, sorry, half past 7 on the first, and then also 7:30 start on the 7th, um, local time. So I think for people in Britain, that'll be just an hour earlier.
Yeah.
But the
Well,
race
this
goes
hopefully other
from,
people will see this, and hopefully we got people hopefully watch this from around the world, and it'd be really nice for them to
yeah, wherever you are, just like type in the
Google
Paris time and do the math. Like
it, Ecosia. Yeah.
yeah.
Do the maths, use Ecosia. There we go. And I just got a last question. Are you going to get to go to the opening ceremony?
No, so the athletics team, we're still in Montpellier at the moment. I'll be getting the train up to Paris on the 29th, which is coming up really quickly. But yeah, so tomorrow I think is the opening ceremony. We'll
Yeah.
be yeah, we'll be in Montpellier for that. I think we're going to be having our own little ceremony and march around the athletics track where we're based. for that, and we'll watch the rest of it on the TV. One of the things with the villages is that they want to limit bed spaces, and so by making sure that the teams competing in the second week aren't in the village until later and shipping off the swimmers that compete earlier. That means that they can build less accommodation because there's less people in the village at any one time. So, that is one initiative that reduces the overall amount of things that need to be built. So,
Mhm.
uh, yeah, I don't mind. I don't think I've actually been to an Olympic opening ceremony before.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay, well, look, that's cool. I hope you enjoy that, and I just want to say I'm going to wish you, on behalf of certainly all the people I know in the Champions for Earth community, and I'm betting beyond will be fully rooting for you. I have spotted there is a British race walker in the race as well,
yeah,
but
Callum. Yep.
yeah, I'm going to support him. I'm definitely going to be supporting you, and I just know that people will be willing you, as I hope you know. And one thing that I think is really important to me is that I certainly will never think anything different of you, no matter what happens in that race. And you are, in my mind, a champion, just for all the efforts you make as an athlete, but also as a champion for Earth, talking, communicating, the work that you do. I feel really super, super happy to have had this chance. And I just wanted, is there anything you want to say that, before we finish, or should we call it a day?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think sort of like on that, it's as an athlete, you never know how the result's going to go on the day. As when you're talking about climate and wanting to get action on that, you never necessarily know or have full control over what's going to end up happening. Yeah, but you have to try. You just don't know how it's going to go if you do try. But if you don't try it, you know it's definitely not going to happen. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I'll do my best in Paris. Hopefully, it has a good result. But if it doesn't have a good result, I'll know that I've tried my best. And the same with the climate. Hopefully we can avoid the worst of man-made global warming. Um, yeah, mitigate as much as we can. If we can't mitigate, adapt. Um, yeah, and the more
Fighting,
people
keep
join,
battling.
yeah, the more people that join that fight, the better.
Well, Rhydian, it's been a pleasure. Thank you ever so much. It's been a real privilege. I'm going to get straight onto the getting this uploaded, and hopefully a few people can see it. But I wish you all the very best, and thank you for being here today, and all the very best.
Yeah, thanks. It's been great to chat.